I'm the guy my friends make fun of. Always talking about some new productivity method, some new workout routine, or some new business idea, only to abandon it a month later. But I just discovered why 97% of us fail at creating lasting change in our behaviors, and it's not what you think. It's something called activation energy. And once you understand this and how to use it in your life, you'll never fail at creating lasting change in your behavior again. You're going to be able to crush your goals and reach your full potential. So, here's what we're going to cover in today's video. We're going to look at the science behind change. What is activation energy and why is it the missing piece in every single one of your failed attempts in change? Then we're going to look at the match analogy, why your changes keep burning out after 10 seconds, metaphorically speaking, and the reason behind it. Then we're going to look at the serial failure truth. And if you're a serial optimizer, always trying to improve things, why you're actually the perfect person to get benefits from this framework. And then at the end, I'm going to walk you through the complete reaction framework with a prompt included that's going to break down step by step how you can take any specific behavioral change in your life and get the full plan for it with this into account so you can create it not just for a few weeks, a few months, but a lasting change in your life. So let's dive in. The science behind change and with activation energy, that's what we're speaking about. It's the minimum energy needed to start a chemical reaction. So think of it as the fire that sets fire to the wood here, that creates the chemical reaction. And when we think about a chemical reaction, it has to be the complete reaction. So it's not just setting fire to a bit of the wood here, it's for the full fire, the bonfire to take place. But here's what's interesting for us. In life, activation energy is the effort required to break the old patterns in your life and build new sustainable ones. But what is crucial and what's the reason why most people fail is because most people only take into account the starting energy needed to get started with breaking old habits, but not the energy required to complete it and make it sustainable. So this distinction will change everything you know about change how you approach it. Because when I discovered this, what I'm going to cover in a moment is that failed changes isn't about willpower. It's not how disciplined you are or how hard you try. It's about incomplete activation energy. So here's where it gets pretty interesting and where you can understand the complete reaction. Let's say you want to start a fire in a fireplace. Take a sheet of paper, you light it with a match, and toss it on the logs. For about 10 seconds, it looks like a real fire. It's lighting up, looks good, and you think this is working, let's go. But then it burns out, and you're staring at the same cold, minimally charred logs. And that's exactly what happens when most of us try to change something. We put in just enough energy to get started, to see some results, but not enough to sustain the reaction. And the difference between successful and failed changes isn't the amount of willpower you have. It's understanding that you need kindling, you need the structure, you need the oily paper, you need different layers of things and oxygen to flow through. You need to monitor and adjust until the big logs are actually burning by themselves. So you not only need the little fire in the beginning, you need everything that I've spoken about here in the match analogy. And I have tried to build consistent workout routines probably the past 5 years, about 10 times, I'd say. And each time I'd start with an amazing new program, push pull legs, full body workouts, 15-minute daily strength trainings. And I'd be so motivated for the first week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month even. But then when the initial excitement wore off, and I wasn't seeing the dramatic results that I was hoping for, and the reason I was implementing the change, I'd slowly stop doing the thing I had started. So, to illustrate all this, this is why you're not weak. This is why you failing at changes doesn't mean that you're weak. You don't have discipline. It just means that you haven't understood what actually needs to happen for change to just be sustainable and be lasting. You need to understand the full energy requirement. And here's my embarrassing truth, as I've already covered a bit. I've become known as the guy who's always pursuing something new. My close friends know that every other month I'm talking passionately about some new system, some new way to optimize. You can see here I've been trying to run a marathon. I've tried to crush it in a number of different marketing fields, tried to do a bunch of different things. And for years, I felt like a failure. I felt like there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Why couldn't I stick to anything? I was always dreaming, planning, executing a few days, few weeks, and then slowly stopping when the thrill wore off. The pattern kept repeating itself. I would start, get excited, I would plateau, I would quit, I would feel shameful about it. Then some new idea would come along, then I would start, and the loop repeats. So if you want to break out of this pattern, I want to explain why most revolutions actually failed, and I want to explain a specific revolution so you can understand exactly what you might need to take into account when creating lasting change. And from there, we'll get straight into the juicy bits and pieces by locking in your concrete activation energy plan. But let me tell you about Thomas Sankara. He was a revolutionary leader in the 1980s, and he helped take over this country and renamed it into what is now known as Burkina Faso. And his story perfectly illustrates what happens when you have enough activation energy to get started, to break apart the old system, but not enough to build the new one and have the new one sustain for a long period of time. But first, in terms of also understanding why most revolutions fail, it is because it's a completely different set of skills that you need to take an old system apart than to create a new one. Most people think in terms of revolutions, the destruction energy, what needs to be removed, what firepower is needed, how many supporters are required. But the thing that's missing here is in removing leadership, you won't see the full reaction. You must also plan for the creation energy, what comes after you break apart the old system. How do you support the people? What structures will help cement your goals? What vision do you have? And how do you get that vision out into the people, out into the society? And this is why lack of this thinking is why so many revolutions fail, but succeed at taking down the government, but fail at building lasting change. And Sankara actually understood this. He and fellow officers, they did wait multiple years before joining a coup. There was multiple coups trying to take over the old regime in Burkina Faso, but he didn't join them because he knew he needed to be strong enough to decisively influence the events post taking over. So when he became president, he eventually joined a coup. And when he became president in 1983, he immediately started to build a new system. He implemented massive changes, things like women's equality, literacy campaigns, healthcare clinics, mass vaccinations. He was building the structure, putting in all of these incentives, everything that was needed for his vision to become self-sustaining. But here is where it becomes a tragedy. In 1987, he was actually assassinated. And the reason for this was because there were some things, some unpredictable things that he hadn't taken account into. Things like people need time to adapt to change. So with all of these new changes, people were resistant. Some people were resistant to it. And instead of letting them, air their concerns, he was very direct and structured in terms of all the people that denied this new approach. They would either be arrested or held back or whatever that might be. So there was a loss of his supporters, and eventually he was assassinated. And the reaction, unfortunately, wasn't complete yet. The new things that he had implemented, which were a lot of great things, weren't strong enough in the country. So the old order came back. Corruption returned. His revolution essentially failed because there wasn't enough activation energy to reach the completion and the self-sustainability. And as you can see on the right here, this is exactly what happens with our personal changes. We start really strong, Maybe not as strong as Thomas Sankara. He was a great man from everything I've been able to read about him. But we do start strong. We start with the right intention. We start with the right knowledge, and we essentially want to complete this change. But when going gets tough, or when unpredictable things come up, or we haven't planned for the future, that's when the new habits fall apart and the old patterns reassert themselves. So, how do you actually change this? There are four components involved. We have what most people focus on, the starting energy, the motivation, the excitement, the initial planning. Then we have the system energy, which are things that are the structure that can keep things in place, the daily habits, the routines, the workflows. If we think about something like content creation, this is something I've implemented to sustain my own change in this content creation journey that I'm on, that I have failed with previously, but now I've taken more things into account, which will eventually cement itself and become irreversible. But there are different workflows that I do every day. There are things that I calculate into in terms of always having a backlog of posts if I get sick, if my children get sick or anything. So system energy is all like, just having that will change a lot. But the third component makes it even stronger. That's accountability. You can also have it in terms of like real people, but also tracking sheets to look at how far you're progressing. You can have community that you're also staying accountable in for. And then the component four, which all of these things needs to be planned initially, is the vision. Why are you actually doing this? What's the timeline? What does it look like when the change is actually irreversible? And this framework works for pretty much any behavioral change. If you want to get in shape, you can use this, map this out. If you want to get up earlier, if you want to start consuming more knowledge, if you want to do more prospecting in your day to day, then you need to take this into account if it is something that you know is good for you in the long term, but you struggle with implementation. And I've made it super easy for you. I have created a long ass prompt that's going to guide you through the process of changing. I'm going to jump into the chat here so you can see kind of like how to get started. And then I'm going to leave it to you once we're finished with choosing now to take the change that you've been postponing and actually implement it through the complete reaction framework. Because knowledge without application is just another form of entertainment. And you don't want to just be filling your mind with endless knowledge that you know could make a difference without applying it. Because why are you even watching this then? So here we are inside of a really cool AI-based writing app called Cortex, where we've built out the prompt. It's called the Complete Reaction Framework, and as you can see here, it's a fairly long prompt that you can copy. There's a link in description, and it basically outlines that first phase is understand current situation, ask you a bunch of questions, and the second phase is to give you the complete reaction framework plan. So here's how I want you to use it. If we go here, I write up prompt complete. This is what's cool about Cortex. You can have prompts within here, and you can just link them straight into Claude, ChatGPT, in one place. But if you're just using ChatGPT or Claude, you can just paste in the full prompt and write this: help me quick mathing change in my behavior. Cool. So now it's going to start the process. And we're going to look at, yes, it's your coach, wants to understand the situation. I'm going to create Quinn. This is good. What habit are you trying to change? How long has this existed in your life? On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this change for you? So I'm just going to write this out. Right. Okay. So I've written out the snooze. Currently, I have 2 kids getting our third in 5 months, and I want to get up 6 a.m. every day. Quite low on sleep most days, but usually get woken up by the kiddo 6:30. So to be honest, it doesn't really matter for me if I get up at 6 or 6:30. However, if I do get up before everybody wakes up, the whole family, There's this sense of peace in the morning, and I feel like I'm in control, strengthens my discipline. I know that it's good for me and it will contribute to my long-term success. So it's a habit that I built. So as you can see here, map out quite extensive answers. The more, the better. The more context you give, the better to any specific chat. So I also write down a line I want to get up even earlier. Um, and how long has this existed? This pattern that I've struggled with getting up. It's been a while, to be honest. It's one of those serial optimization failures. And now I kind of want to use the system to take into account for other things and actually implement lasting change. So go through the questions, answer the scale of importance, just write out. Even this exercise can make you aware of things you wouldn't have thought of. And let's see what it responds with. Okay. Your situation is relatable. You've captured something many parents struggle with, and I can see some powerful motivators beneath the surface. Specific goal 6 a.m. daily. Duration 5 to 6 years of failed attempts. Ports 6 to 7 now, and 10 out of 10, but increasing as kids get older. Core motivation, discipline, control, creating a space for personal growth. Let's dive deeper. So, this is where we find the goal. Describe your previous attempts. What did your approach look like? Did you try going cold turkey or just gradual changes? How long did your previous attempts last? What do you believe is the main reason? So once we map this out, and I already know what worked, to be honest. So some of the things that did work was I had mapped out the morning in advance, like what am I gonna do when I wake up? And it started falling apart when I stopped doing that. So by answering these questions, it's gonna get insight into the kind of the systems that it needs to build. It's gonna give you the initial motivation. It's gonna figure out the accountability method that's gonna work, and also the vision. I'm gonna just pause for a minute and we can look further into what this is gonna give you. So I've responded to these and mentioned some of my previous attempts, how long they lasted, and why I believe they failed. We can go into the chat, and it greets me and says, "I have excellent self-awareness. This is nice. I was missing a why, and I wasn't preparing properly." So the longest streak was 5 days, and weekends derailed you. So we need to build a system that works 7 days a week from day one, rather than treating weekends as cheat days. Yeah, that makes sense. So what motivates me to make the change? What obstacles or friction points emerge? What systems or structures might have been missing? So as you can see here, we're kind of looking throughout the whole phase and building the system that will help you change. Okay, so I've just answered a few more of the questions just to get to the end of things so you can see the full reaction framework and how the plan looks. And here it is. It made me outline my vision, why this is important. It gave me some role models and some other things. So the framework plan, the complete reaction framework. First, we get the starting energy, the purpose statement, and an ignition ritual. Then we have success metrics to kind of track. Next up is the prep work system, and this is what we do each evening. Then we have the 6 a.m. routine, the first 30 days, and environmental design. Then we have support energy, daily tracker, weekly review, identity tracking, and we got some virtual mentors, ideally also a content angle, and explain to my wife how this helps make me a better husband and father. Obstacle management, what happens if kids wake up early, if I snooze, if I'm sick, and then the completion definition. Getting up feels more natural than staying in bed. Crave morning routines off when you don't do it. So this is where we want to get. Give use of timelines and milestones, and then transform identity vision. So here's the 30-day implementation plan, and basically you don't need anything else in that. Now you have the knowledge, now you have the plan, now you get to work. Just writing out these questions took me no more than 20 to 30 minutes. And if that's all it takes to create lasting change in your life and finally say goodbye to all the failed attempts, 30 minutes. Wouldn't that be worth it? This was Freddy Storm. I look forward to hearing how you implement the complete reaction framework. In the comments below, say what change you're going after, which change you're gonna freaking crush, and like this video if you thought it was insightful. Subscribe, and I'll see you next week.